one of my friends was in tech, and we were talking tech versus food. And this is like, again, this is probably 20 years ago. And he goes, I think the problem that you're going to have, Mike, is what I'm putting together is rare. There's more. It's called like there's marginal utility in it because it's different than everything else. It's got a marginal usefulness, but there's no shortage of food in the country. So how are you competing for food? And I go, oh, and I realized you compete on your story.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Local Marketing Lab, where you get real-world insights from industry pros to help you drive local revenue and local growth. This podcast is brought to you by Evocalize, digital marketing tools powered by local data that automatically work where and when your locations need it most. Learn more at evocalize.com. Well, what's up, and welcome to the Local Marketing Lab. Joining us in the lab today is a guest with over 40 years of restaurant experience. His restaurant holds 4 Guinness World Records. He's the star of the award-winning show King of Fish, and the CEO of San Pedro Fish Market, Michael Ungaro. Thanks for joining us in the lab, my friend.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Yeah, it's awesome. This is actually a really exciting one. We don't typically have TV stars on the show, so nor do we have Guinness record holders.
Those are fun accomplishments.
Real quick, what are some of the records that you guys hold?
So we used to do the Port of Los Angeles Lobster Fest. And we just did the lobsters. We didn't produce the festival, but the producer's like, I really want to get some press, and I don't think anybody's doing anything near the volume of lobsters that you're selling. I want to get Guinness out to see if you could do a world record for it, and they did, but they wouldn't let us put the word lobster in. They just said seafood. And I forget the numbers, but they came out on a Saturday, and we had to have a juncticator from Guinness there, and we had to have a celebrity to make sure they count. It was a whole thing we had to do. And we did something like 8,000 or 9,000 pounds of lobster over a certain amount of time. Actually, it might be 18,000. It was a lot. It was a ton of lobster, but they only put seafood on it. So somebody went up against us in somewhere in South America, I think, doing sardines because it's a seafood.
Super
so
cheap.
They said most served in a single day, and they beat us by a ton for a fraction of the cost. So and it's funny because I don't know if you know this, but lobsters used to be prison food. No one would want to eat them.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Lobster. They were considered a bug, so they fed them to prisoners. And somewhere, somebody created a story or a narrative. Somebody with some genius marketing and turned them into a luxury food.
Yeah, that is incredible.
I had to do homework on that one because I don't know who it was, but so that was the first one. And then what happened was we reapproached Guinness, and they started softening their stand on it. And we're like, this is not fair. Let us tell you what. If you let us call it lobster, we'll do 3 in a single day. And what we'll do is most cooked in a single pot, most served in a single vessel, and most cooked over the course of like so many hours. And I'm forgetting all the numbers. All the records are hanging in our office, but I'm not there right now, and I can't remember it. But we just killed it, and nobody came close to it after that. And it was in the thousands and thousands. We would do something like 30,000 pounds of lobster in a weekend at this event. And they're all Maine lobsters that we flew in. And we built at one point our own cooker that ran on diesel. We tried to do biodiesel. It smelled like In-N-Out French fries, and it clogged everything up and broke. but we created this 3 giant boilers on a trailer with like a conveyor belt and then a winch to lower it in. So you'd have one group of guys just going back and forth to the airport to pick up pallets and boxes, dump them in, winch it up, put it in the water for 10 minutes, take it out, put it on wheel it around the front to all the workers that were just making lobster meals and just pushing it out all weekend. We were able to do about 2,000 pounds of lobster, like from water to serve per hour at this event.
Wow.
It was crazy.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's what
that's insane. Yeah, we could.
We don't do it anymore because it got to this point where it was so much labor, and we just couldn't figure out if what we were producing in sales was worth the amount of time and energy. Like I don't know if there was a return. There was a great PR point to it. We got a lot of press from doing the event, and we'd go on TV and we'd do all these different things, and it was really cool. But we just got to the point where it's like after 20 years, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired.
Yeah, that's like everything in life. My kid asked me to swing her around the other day, and I'm like, I'm tired. Just getting
It's
older.
tough, man.
So, speaking of tired, you've been in the industry for a long time. I looked in your bio, and I guess you started when you were 7 years old.
I did. I remember one summer my dad's like, and this is before we were really in the restaurant industry at the time. We were seafood, but it was mostly retail wholesale seafood. And I remember my dad's like, you want to come to work with me? And he paid me like, I don't know, like $1 an hour to work 7 hours, just shoving ice cold fish into bags and shoveling ice and our seafood warehouse at the
Yeah.
time was called Shamrock Seafoods. And I mean, I had money. The ice cream man was pumped when he'd come down the street, but I was like, I really want to play. So
Yeah.
age 8, 9, I think in 10, I took off. Um, in 1982, on Good Friday, we reopened what became the San Pedro Fish Market. And that same time, we had been evicted from the location. Our primary business has always been on the LA waterfront in the city of San Pedro.
Hmm.
And we started in 1956 when my grandfather had a little 200 square foot business selling seafood to the locals. And my dad and uncle ran it. They're like 15 years old. And he kind of gave them a choice. He goes, I'll pay for you to go to school or you can work. And they're like, we hate school. So they just worked. And by 1959, they had moved down and taken over a place called Norm's Landing, which was on the LA waterfront. And nothing had been developed down there at the time. And it was just a little fresh fish market. And they just ran a bunch of experiments. They learned the seafood business. They weren't on boats. They were kids. So they were just figuring out, well,
Hmm.
let's try smoked fish. We're doing shrimp cocktails. What if we brought in live crab and lobster? And then you get to 1978, 79, and I'm 8 or 9 years old at the time. And the
Hmm.
whole area was being redeveloped. They were expanding. They had this Portugal village area that was being built, and it was built really earlier than that, but it was being expanded, and we had to leave. And our building was torn down, and they built this village, but we were able to secure a space to build a new restaurant. So for a
Hmm.
year, we worked out of trailers in a parking lot, and I was like 9, 10 years old. And we finally opened on Good Friday of 1982, and my mom had like gallstone surgery at the time. It was it
Hmm.
wasn't a day surgery like it is now. So we had to go to work because she had to recover. So I started
Hmm.
working again at 11, 12 when we that Good Friday 1980, probably 82. I don't think I ever stopped. Tried a
Yeah.
few times, but it's been hard. But the irony to that story is last year we had to leave that building. So we built this building and we expanded and bought another restaurant next to us. Built another one in the middle was built by my uncle, and altogether this was on 55,000 square feet with 3,000
Hmm.
seats, and it was serving close
Wow.
to 2 million people a year. Only SeaWorld was bringing in more people than us on the whole Western Seaboard. That wasn't like
That's
subsidized, like that
crazy.
you had to pay money and drive to visit us. And the thing was, it's like these were customers that were driving over an hour, a lot from Las Vegas and from Phoenix, like making day trips and going back home. Parking
Yeah.
isn't sufficient. We didn't have the seats to handle all these people. So you're driving hours, you're waiting in line a couple hours to get in the building, another hour to get your food. And so we had created this like phenomenon inside the business. And last year we were told, or a year and a half ago now, I guess it is, but like, you're going to have to leave because we're redeveloping everything again and you're in the way. And we knew this was happening. It's been going on for like 12 years. So we left we tried to negotiate and work things out. So ultimately we left that building. It all got torn down in August and we're working out of a parking lot again for a year, just like we did when I was 11 years old. So it's been a
That's
wild ride.
crazy.
Been a
So
wild
are you
ride.
still in
Yeah,
the parking lot now then, or
we
what's your
are, and
situation currently?
we're still in the parking lot. We'll be part of the project that they're redeveloping. So we
Oh,
just kind
cool.
of been dancing around. So in 60 days, my team. I cannot take any credit for this other than putting the team together and like go for it. I believe in you.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me. They in 60 days time because we were worried this was going to happen. So they had been preparing, like talking to vendors and figuring out how we're going to do this. In 60 days' time, they moved 100 yards to an empty parking lot that wasn't slated to be part of the development for at least a year. It turned
Uh-huh.
out not to be accurate. And reopened with two FEMA trailers, like 32-foot kitchens, bathrooms, all portable. There's no water, no drainage, no power. And we reopened,
Wow.
moved as many of our seats as we could. We found the best covering we could find, fenced it all off, and reopened it. And what we did was we called it the Landing, which was a callback to Norm's Landing that we had been evicted from and
Oh
moved into a
yeah.
parking lot, 1979, 80. And the customers kept coming. We went from $30 million in sales annually to drop down to about half of that. I think we're on track to do 15 or 16 out of a parking lot, though.
Yeah,
With
that's pretty
temporary rented
crazy.
equipment. And then my nephew kind of took over the IT role, my brother's son, and he's like, well, we have to figure out as a team, we're not going to have a fresh fish market. And our concept was you came in, picked out your own seafood, and then we cook it for you and serve it family style on big trays.
Oh.
And we didn't have a fish market. There's no way to build a fish market into this parking lot. So he said we could use
Hmm.
QR codes, and we turned on Toast. We just switched to Toast. We're trying to figure out how to put it into the restaurant. Well, tearing it down made it easy because now we could reinvent everything.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
went to Toast, but Toast at the time they had a QR code offer, but not for 1,500 seats. So
Right.
we were about 1,000 seats at the time. So we teamed up with another company called Me and You that works with Toast. Did the QR codes? They're more like concert venues, but there's a lot of seats. And we tested it. We turned it on. We said, all right, this is what's going to happen. Customers are going to go straight to the table instead of waiting in line for alcohol, waiting in line for seafood, waiting in line for calamari or a sandwich, like 5 different lines, and then converge on a table. Go straight to the table, QR code, and we'll just run the food to them. Like it works everywhere else. There
Yeah.
were some issues, but it worked out. And for
That's
over a year now, it's
awesome.
been continuing. We had to work. We even moved to a different parking lot in January to get out of the construction again.
Oh my
In
word.
in 4 days, they moved the entire restaurant to another parking lot, plugged it back in, and
That is
now
so wild.
we are now in the process of building what we're going to call. So we're in the first one was the landing phase one. The other move was phase 1.5, and we're trying to get
Hmm.
to phase two, which is just on the other side of this fence, and it's about 30,000 square feet. We had all these temporary kitchens built that we'll own that will plug into
Yeah.
utilities and power, and then we'll build a deck and seating and everything. And we're just trying to get through like the building and safety and bureaucracy, but
Yeah.
that's the plan. That
Jeez.
should be open soon.
That's awesome. And then when are you slated to have like your final
Well,
location finished?
once we get this, we're negotiating leases for both at the same time because we could conceivably have both locations. This temporary one could last for years, and
Yeah.
then we'll start building what will be back in our. We're going to call it like our legacy location, back in the original
Yeah.
San. We're going back to where we were, basically,
Yeah.
but we'll be
That's
able to
awesome.
design and build it the way we want now, like from ground up. So
Yeah.
I'm expecting it's at least 3 years,
Yeah.
but I don't know
Wow.
because it's a big project.
It's a bit, yeah. I've seen the video that you guys have just from your show and stuff, and it's, I mean, massive. I've never been there, but it makes me want to go. A massive location, and like you said, the numbers that you're throwing out, they sound huge, but to see it is just like, oh my goodness, the market, all the people is so busy. All
Yeah.
the seating, it's just a packed house at all times. Incredible.
Yeah, and I
So
would attribute a lot of that to our marketing. If I come back to the purpose of the call.
yeah, what are the things that you're actually doing, like from a local marketing standpoint, to drive all that traffic? I mean, people are coming from everywhere.
um, it's funny. Like growing up, I've always dug marketing. Like that. I remember. I didn't distinguish between marketing and advertising. I was younger because you'd be watching Bewitched, and the husband
Yeah,
Darren was like worked for an advertising agency, and like, oh, that's really cool. And then there was
yeah,
another movie I remember with Tom Hanks and Jackie Gleason where he was worked for an advertising agency, and they're doing this whole thing about like airlines, and I was like, that's awesome. It's creative. It's
yeah,
innovative. You're not stuck. You're not just stuck doing repetitive work, which is what I was used to. So I always thought it would be cool, but my family thought it was just that's a bunch of BS, hocus pocus crap.
yeah.
It doesn't
New
work.
Age Huey.
One time we made up flyers that had free lobster and we passed them out everywhere. Not one of them came back. This shit doesn't
Yeah,
work. Okay, I'm sorry.
that is actually real, like reality for a lot of folks. I think they just
It
do it the
is.
one and done, and that's not how it
Yeah,
works. But
didn't understand, right? So I
yeah,
left family business at one point, and I was running my own little restaurant. I had an idea, and I wanted to test it, and I wanted it to be mine, and it was
uh-huh.
my complete failure. It was a little seafood restaurant, and I like tested things. Like I went and ran this little location we had that we owned as a family, and I tested certain things out, and they seemed to be working. Like I think I could do this on my own. I'm at equity in my house. This guy's selling his restaurant for $25,000. I could just write a check and I'll take it
Yeah,
over. And it's in a better area. It's on a high traffic area. Let me test this out. And I realized like I'm okay at operations, pretty bad at finance, but I didn't know anything about marketing. So I had to learn it then. And I started
Oh
studying
yeah.
and reading about it and figuring things out. And this was 20 years ago, so there was no social media. So had to get
Yeah.
really innovative. One of the things I did is I created a corporate catering business out of this business because we were freeway close, and I had friends that were pharmaceutical reps that were like,
Hmm.
hey, if you could put together some of those meals we grew up with in our hometown, like mastacholi and different like tri-tips and stuff. I got a kitchen, I could do it. You're right on all the freeways. I can get you in all the hospitals. And so I
Okay.
realized, oh, there's this whole B2B offer here I wasn't thinking about. And so
Yeah.
there was a hardware store next door. It was called True Value Hardware. And,
Oh yeah.
restaurants, I'm in there all the time buying tools, trying to patch things back together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I talked to the owner, we became friends. We kind of grew up in the same town, knew a lot of the same people. And he's like, did you do any marketing? He goes, I hate marketing. I hate it, Mike. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
well, there you got UPS and Seas Candy and FedEx and all these aerospace companies. All their warehouses are back here. Do they buy from you? And he goes, yeah. I go, you have their information? He goes, yeah. You want their? I'll give you all the contact info. No, I'm not. I'm not. I don't like to ask for something for nothing. So here's what I'll do.
Yeah.
If you give me the list, I'm going to send them all a Christmas card from you, thanking them for your 50 years of business. And in return for that, I'm going to have on the other side of this Christmas card a $1 taco thing. It's at a seafood restaurant next door, right? The Mexican style
Hmm.
seafood restaurant. So I got it. He said, I put it together. I had a mail house, shipped it all out. And he comes to me, he goes, dude, these people are pumped. I've never sent them
Yeah.
anything before. And I go, and I didn't send them anything this. You sent it. It's from you, not from me. And I go, yeah, but they're happy, right? So you're satisfied? Because I'm going to use the list to start mailing out my Christmas menu, holiday menu.
Yeah.
He goes,
Yeah.
do whatever. He didn't care, but he got a bunch of recognition out of it. Customers came in to thank him. I got a bunch of customers coming in the restaurant, and then I got a whole catering offer out of it. So
Yeah. That's
that
incredible.
was real. And so I took those things back to my family when I went back to work with them and tried to figure out, there's direct mail stuff that we can do, and then social media pops up.
Hmm.
So we were doing a ton of charity work, but just no one ever talked about it. So I started
Yeah.
looking into who are we helping. We had something like 40 different churches, nonprofits, hospitals, Boys and Girls Club. And I'll share another story about where that was benefiting us that we didn't see it. And my friend has this quote: "You can't wield the weapon you don't know that you have." I was like,
Hmm.
I didn't know we were doing all these things through the business. And
Yeah.
when this redevelopment thing was happening, I asked the board of directors for the Port of Los Angeles, because they're our landlord, can we be on the agenda to tell everyone who we are? I don't think anybody knows. We're head down, butt up. We don't talk about this stuff. And I
Hmm.
reached out to some of these nonprofits and people that were helping in the community. They all showed up to talk. And this one guy, who was my accounting teacher in high school, now ran
Hmm.
the local Boys and Girls Club. And he shared this story. And this is a great example of like local marketing and building your identity and getting out there and helping people. The problem was nobody knew this was happening, right? So he says, my first day taking over this job for the Boys and Girls Club, we had no money. It was Christmas
Hmm.
time. I had all these kids. I didn't know what I could do to help them. And this guy rolls in a station wagon. He says, "Get in with me." And my name's Tommy. And I don't know who this Tommy guy is. For all I know, he's going to drive me off a cliff. I don't know. I might never come back. And he brought him to the local sporting goods store. And he goes, "Okay, well, we're going to buy everything we can until we can't fit anything else in this car. And then you're going to bring it back, and it's for the kids." And we're all sitting there going, I had no, it's Tommy being my uncle, our founder.
Oh wow.
I had no idea he was doing this. And he had been doing it every year for years. And a lot of those kids, because the Boys and Girls Club was a big part of his life growing up, and a lot of those kids
Hmm.
were employees of ours back and forth. They would go to Boys and Girls Club to work for us. And some of them have become really successful CEOs in their own right. And so we had built up this identity of helping people, but we were so stealth about it until I
Hmm.
made it public in this board meeting. And there was just story after story like that. And
Mm.
so we started using our PR. Found a PR company. We brought in some social media help, and we started to figure out like what other stories are we not telling that people are making up about us because they don't know what we're doing. And that's why I
Hmm.
started to see this uptick in our sales, because the more we put those stories out, the more people could relate to us being like a good member of the community. But
Hmm.
also, what happened was there was a lot of people that had been coming to us for years. Like I used to come here when I was a little kid. Now I'm bringing my kids and my parents, and they didn't know who. They just knew it was a tradition. But when you added the story of who we were and what we were doing, it was a whole different level of I don't want to say commitment or compassion, but like it was a different level of connection for people. because they already had us in their story, but they made up their own story about us. They didn't know who the owners were. A lot of people thought we were a swap meet with a bunch of different stands selling seafood. They didn't know it
Oh,
was a business. So by telling the story, putting it out there, and then using social media and eventually Kings of Fish, our web series, it just kept escalating, and our sales grew over a 10-year period, like double digit every single month.
hmm.
Just connecting with people and telling those stories, and so I had to build a whole team to manage it because it was too much for me, but
Yeah,
it
for
worked. It
sure.
worked. It worked out really well for us.
Yeah, it's very interesting concept. People don't typically buy from companies. They buy from people.
Hmm.
And they typically also don't remember the things you say, but they remember how you make them feel.
Yeah.
So if you're doing your best to go around in your community and you're connecting with folks, establishing, relationships, building rapport, and then also doing your best to highlight them and tell their story, it's going to come
Right.
back to you, in spades because those people will always remember how you made them feel and then they'll share that story to their network. And that's the beauty of social media is then you can take those stories and you can share them with your network and then it also puts your company and your logo front and center to their
Right.
network, and it
Right.
just you have this incredible networking effect where you're able to get in front of way more eyeballs, get way more reach than you typically would have had otherwise.
Also, you brought up a good point that I hadn't thought about. I wonder now if a lot of people liked us and didn't want to think of us as a big company, so made up these stories about seafood swapping and different things until we were able to tell them, no, no, we're a family-owned business. Like I'm third generation, the fourth is coming up, and it's I'm wondering if maybe that made it easier, excuse me, for them to like us. Because I
Mm-hmm.
get the like big corporation thing. Like I don't want to go to chain. I don't want to go to big company. But at the same time, I'm thinking that part of the story we were telling was to humanize who we were. We're not
Mm-hmm.
just a big greedy company. We do a lot for the community. We do a lot for our customers. We do a lot of charity work. We do a lot of different stuff. Matter of fact, like I didn't realize this. When the eviction happened last year, we had to figure out where we are going to set up shop. We didn't know if this parking lot thing was going to work. We're just,
Mm-hmm.
we're going through the motions. And I reached out to a local brewery, Brew West. It's in San Pedro, and they're pretty new. They've been open a few years. I don't think it might be 10 now, maybe 8. But I remember when they
Mm-hmm.
first opened, I got to know the owners a little bit because it's a small town. We all know one another. And, if we needed something, like he'd call, hey, can we borrow your forklift? Yeah, sure. Do you have change? We're out of fives. I'm like, yeah, I'll send someone over. And
Mm-hmm.
we would do that for anybody. It wasn't like special for them. It's just how we were. We're all very helpful. We very seldom turned out requests. Well, I reached
Mm-hmm.
out to him and I said, we're trying to figure out after this eviction where to go. We're going to get this 32-foot kitchen. I know you have a food truck thing. You have food trucks coming in and out of the brewery all the time instead of building their own kitchen. That's what they do. They bring in food trucks. Is there a possibility that we could set up there just to test this kitchen out and see if, we'll send all our customers are going to show up and we're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
there. And you're a half a mile away. So I could send them all to you. You'll get the beer sales and I could test the food kitchen out. And he tells me, he goes, Mike, when we opened, you're the only one that was there to support us. Like every time I had a problem, you were always there. Everybody else, I feel like, fought us all the time. I never understood, and I didn't know any of this. You can do anything you
Mm-hmm.
want. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was like a great example of helping the community, and then they came back to help us. The problem was we were so successful that we took all the sales away from the other food trucks. So it's like that wasn't my intention. But we had this strong brand, and what we did was we taught them how to do micheladas, which was something that had become really popular for us, and we had our own
Mm-hmm.
recipes. So I said, what we'll do is uh, we'll give you the recipe and all the ingredients, and you guys already they were already making like sort of a Mexican lager. So we'll give you
Mm-hmm.
how to make the michelada. Then our customers, because we can't sell beer, you have the license, but we'll sell the food. They're going to want a michelada. You can sell the michelada. Everybody wins. It became so
Yeah,
popular. I think they have like a michelada festival now there a couple times a month.
that's awesome. It just
Yeah,
goes to show too the power in partnering with other local businesses. Like there are so many different businesses that could go hand in hand with what you provide,
yeah,
and even otherwise, like your example of doing with the hardware store, doing that kind of co-op. I mean, that's an incredible example. You don't have to have like a food and a drink, or dinner and a movie or something that goes together naturally. You
yeah,
could just have a friendly that you work with to help, partner
Yeah.
and drive traffic.
I moved into the house we're in now, and I remember when kids were young. So my daughter, I have three daughters, and the youngest just turned 20, and the other one's 23 and 24. I think I'm losing track. Sorry, I can't believe they're in their 20s. So I kind of in denial about it too. But when we first moved in, we couldn't really go out to eat anywhere because they were young, and we're working hard, and the money was tight and all this stuff. And I used to get this mailer, and it was simple. It was just 8.5 by 11 white, folded in half, right? Bam.
Hmm.
So you get it, and it was for a local restaurant, and it would have the name of the restaurant and like a coupon or something. And on the back side, it would have some other information. And when you open it, it was a calendar of events of all the things they had going on in the restaurant, and then a story about one of the employees or a customer. And every month I would get it going, this is so simple, but I want to go there so bad now, but I just couldn't work it out with the kids. And then they redeveloped
Yeah.
it and it was gone. But it stuck out in me. It's like mailers are incredible. And I remember I had subscribed when I started trying to figure out the catering part of my little restaurant that I shut down. I was subscribing to I think it was Michael Atias, who had like a Corky's barbecue in Tennessee, and he was
Mm-hmm.
he was a franchisee. And I had started following. I bought all of his like sales letters and all his marketing stuff. Like, oh, this is really cool. And like, what are the top 10 things that every caterer should a question you should ask your caterer before you hire them? They were very basic sales like techniques, but
Hmm.
really focused on the business I was in for restaurants. And I used a bunch of it. And it worked out really well. Like, you'd go to a chamber meeting, and I would get there early, and I would have my card stapled to a menu with the sales letter, and I'd leave it on
Hmm.
everyone's chair, and we'd get all this business out of it. And I think those things, I don't know. I don't. I talk about this for people that work for us or have been in this business, and it's totally foreign to think that way. It's like, well,
Hmm.
can't I just use social media? And you can. I'm sure it's a powerful tool. But some of those basic techniques, like the way I hold it, is you've got to talk to people at least 7, 8, 9, 10 times, but not the same thing over and over. As much as you can
Right.
change it, maybe it's print ad, maybe it's newspaper, maybe it's a social media ad, maybe it's a Google ad, maybe it's a phone call, email, text. And eventually, once you can get them to transact with you or accept your offer, then it's really just taking care of them, following through, holding your ethics, being on time for the call. All
Right.
those things, like they're important, and those ethics show up. And I'm finding like it's a competitive world. There's no shortage of. One of my friends was in tech, and we were talking tech versus food. And this is like, again, this is probably 20 years ago. And he goes, I
Hmm.
think the problem that you're going to have, Mike, is what I'm putting together is rare. There's more. It's called like there's marginal utility in it because it's different than everything else. It's got a
Yeah.
marginal usefulness, but there's no shortage of food in the country. So how are you
Yeah.
competing for food? And I go, oh, and I realize you compete on your story. I mean, that's really what it comes
Hmm.
down to. If you have a story, nobody can take that away, but they will control it if they don't know what it is, and you'll become a seafood swap meet instead of an experiential seafood brand, which is what we've been
Yeah.
changing to.
And I know that it's something that Sean Walchef says a lot is nobody's coming to tell your story. Like you have
Yeah,
to get out there and you have to tell your own story proactively. Because like
yeah,
you said, others will just come up with their assumptions as to what it
yeah.
is, and then you're not controlling the narrative.
And when I first met Sean, he didn't know we had the web series, and I didn't know what he was doing. And he was
Hmm.
telling like what you just said, and I'm like, I do that. Wait, I'm not
Yeah.
doing it as well as you are. Something's missing. So I've actually been working quite a bit with him on like
Oh, cool.
I was focusing more on our customer communication. I wasn't thinking about our Kings of Fish series as a B2B opportunity the way that he does. He's really
Yeah.
genius that way. So we kind of partnered up. Like, if you can help me find the B2B like relationships, because we want sponsors to help pay for production. And then,
Oh, yeah.
I can do a whole bunch of other things with it on the entertainment side and for customer, acquisition, if you want. I hate saying it that way, but really it's what it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
putting word out. Like, we're in the process right now of negotiating a deal to open a new location in Northern California. And it'll
Oh,
be
cool.
great because it'll be a great season that we could film and capture all of it. And
Yeah.
all the vendors that are going to help us open, it's a
Hmm.
17,000 square foot waterfront location, once we kind of work out the
Hmm.
deal points and get a lease signed. But that can make for a great story because I know
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of drama on that. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, we did when I was at Polaris. We worked pretty closely with certain folks. One of the shows that we worked very closely with was the Diesel Brothers and Discovery Channel, and it was
Oh,
one
cool.
of those things where you could you can infuse your product into the stories that are being told, and people buy into the stories, and that's what actually wins over hearts and minds, as opposed to just, pushing branded content at them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you something. So just to switch gears a little bit, because I know we're kind of coming up on time. One of your daughters sent me a message with some information about your background, and it turns out that you sold your dream car to go vacation in Europe for a couple months.
Yeah. My dream car was a Jeep Wrangler. Like I
Oh,
always
cool.
wanted one. My best friend had a Jeep that was his sister's, and we'd cruise around. And I realized, I was talking to my dad about one day and go, what does it take to buy a car? Like I bought a used car, but he funded it and I paid him back when I was in high school because he had friends with used cars a lot. But if I wanted to buy a new one, I could probably qualify for that line. So it actually happened. I had my dream car. I loved it, graduated college, and I wanted to go travel Europe for a couple of months. So I said, I'm just going to sell it. I'll figure it out when I get back. And it was totally worth it. Had a lot of problems anyways with the clutch.
Oh yeah, that's a clutch. That's actually a common thing, especially with Wranglers. Well, I thought it might be cool to maybe show you in Europe with a dream car. But putting together some James Bond vibes for Michael Bond.
Is that an AI version of me?
Yeah,
Terrifying.
I like to take little interesting facts about our guests and drop them into an AI image. So
That's
this
cool.
is what I came up with.
I have a whole bunch of that's the best one I've seen. Oh my God, you got to send that to me. I told our team, I'm like, I'm in all these meetings with people for some of the projects we're on, and I go straight to their LinkedIn page so I can understand who I'm talking to. If they're going to our LinkedIn page, like we haven't really developed it. So I said, I want everybody to get headshots and do all this stuff. I go, okay, we'll find a photographer. Go to AI and just make something now. You can
Just
do the
make them,
photographer later. And there's the creepiest pictures that came up of all of us in the program we're using. Like, am I a cult leader? What am I doing? But that one, the secret agent one, is my favorite.
It's pretty cool. Well, awesome. Before we let you go, it was a ton of fun having you. But how can our listeners follow you, follow your brand, follow your show?
Oh, sure. Our website, sanpedrofish.com, will give you all the information that we do, from e-commerce to the locations we have. And you could also go to kingsoffishtv.com. And then all our social media channels are at San Pedro Fish or at Kings of Fish. And they're pretty much
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, you guys have a few locations. For our listeners, if you're in Southern California, check out San Pedro Fish Market. Like I said, it looks incredible. I wish I were there to try it out. But you have some award-winning food, and obviously they can come by and check out what you got there.
Also go to Gold Belly, and we'll ship you a shrimp tray that you can cook within. It doesn't freeze, so you need to cook it within the first couple of days. I'll send.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll send you one.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
and I'll send you a thank you card from a hardware store with some sort of coupon on it. Awesome. Well, this is awesome. Thanks again for joining us in the lab.
All right, great to be here. Thanks again.
As always, thanks for joining us in the Local Marketing Lab. This podcast is brought to you by Evocalize. To learn how Evocalize can help you grow your business, visit evocalize.com. If you learned something new from today's episode, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Evocalize. That's EVOCALIZE. And on X at Evocalize Inc. And remember, keep innovating and trying new things. You never know what's going to connect with your audience until you try. And until next time, thanks for listening.